On Monday, June 14th, 2021. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting and City Council budget meeting this evening. Prior to beginning this portion of our meeting, though, I'd ask that we stand and salute the flag. I'd ask Councillor Felch if he could lead us, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councillor. Nice to be among all of you this evening.
Yep.
Good to be back home, so to speak. This evening at the council table, we're joined by our recording secretary, City Clerk Cheryl Hebert, and City Manager Scott Myers. Also, City Finance Manager is in the background there, helping, I think, with IT. Glenn Smith. First on our agenda is presentations. Under 6A, this would be the department budget presentation from the library. So I know I saw Mr. Moriarty and Mr. Bro here. Hello.
Can we do roll call?
Would you like to? Madam Clerk would like to do roll call. So we work at her pleasure.
Counselor Cheney,
Here.
Counselor Susie,
Here.
Counselor Littman is not present. Counselor Haynes.
Here.
Counselor Hamel.
Here.
Counselor Felch.
Here.
Mayor Hosmer.
Here.
Thank you.
I'm prone to skip over an item or two. Anyway, hello, join us. I can almost guarantee you won't be interrupted again.
Well, where's the
Okay.
fun in that?
There is none. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors. John Moriarty, Chairman of the Library Board of Trustees, joined by Randy Bro. So thank you for your time this evening. I wanted to just sort of set the stage as we look at the numbers here, and hoping everyone can hear me and it's recorded okay. I just want to start with where we were a year ago and the uncertainty that we all faced and how to spend cautiously the rest of our budget and how that impacted this year's numbers. So I think it warrants just a moment to linger on the fact that when the stay at home or safer at home order happened, that 240 of the 242 libraries ceased operations here in the state of New Hampshire. And 2 libraries in the state, Laconia being one of them, public libraries, and I think Conway Central the other, pivoted and commenced curbside pickup and continued offering services both online and through real paper material. So I'm infinitely proud of our staff, and I really want everyone to acknowledge what a stellar job they did. It's obvious to me that when we're telling people to stay home, giving them something to do while they're at home is an important safety check valve. And our numbers demonstrate that that really was used quite effectively. But what was not immediately obvious to me at the beginning, and in hindsight, it's remarkable how well used this was. But as we began looking at how to operate our building as safely as we could, we had really good command of our air handling systems, of our physical spaces, of our cubic volume, all of those attributes that go along with a physical building. But when it came to some of the less certain things, the thing that's tremendously obvious is that librarians, by the nature of their work, have access to really solid, robust, and believable information. And they continue to be a resource, not only for us in the decision-making process, but also to the rest of the community as they try to operate their businesses and make decisions about their children. So again, I know your time is valuable, but I am so grateful for the incredible job that the Laconia Public Library staff did. And so thank you for indulging me that chance to say it publicly. As we fast forwarded into May and June, we were really quite concerned from a fiscal standpoint, what costs will be downshifted, what impact on costs and taxes will happen. We frankly invoked draconian measures to limit as much of our cost as we possibly could and save as much of those proceeds for the city to turn back. I think we did a pretty decent job of that last year, and you can see that. In addition to that, we had staff that were using whatever apparatus was available to them, and we operated with a pretty thin crew. And I do want to also acknowledge that several trustees and you know who they are, with the backgrounds to make decisions and do some of the actual paperwork and accounting, stepped up to the plate. And so we had substantial savings in our salaries and personnel line. Obviously, cleaning went way over budget. And we're still sort of trying to juggle how all those pieces work. And obviously, we didn't have programming. There's no physical way to do that and maintain safe distances. So we dramatically underspent the programming budget. But I think where we are this year, as we look forward to the upcoming fiscal year, is that we have made the determination through a series of motions at the board level that we will be almost exactly back at full operations. There'll be a little nuance here or there for the foreseeable future, but we are substantially back at full operations now and will continue to do so. And I'm pretty excited. We're in conversations with, I'm always going to get their name wrong. I have yet to say it right. Spectacle Management, thank you, about perhaps staging one of our summer programs on the main stage of the Colonial Theater when the time is appropriate. So for our children's summertime program. So we're excited about that arrangement. And as we look at those line items, we expect things to return to normal. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. As you look down furnishing and expenditures, we underspent significantly. In fact, there was a recommendation to not quite fully fund it this year. Already we have for this fiscal year, in fact, we've overspent it. So I really think it will be a back to normal kind of year for us from a fiscal standpoint. So I hope that preempts any questions that you have, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions as well.
Thank you, Mr. Moriarty. I think you've alluded to it a bit here. I was looking, it's about a $13,000 or $14,000 increase. Is that correct, from budget 2021 to 21-22? Right, $547,000 up to $561,000. So we're going up.
Strictly in the salary line. Everything else minus salary is actually roughly $2,000.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the programming going up $5,000 from 1920 to actually 2021 is 15.
Yeah, Steve, honestly, the lines in our operating budget are very similar.
Okay.
Get the microphone a little more.
Yeah, sorry, Randy, sorry. Yeah, the lines in the operating portion of the budget, not excluding the salaries, are almost the same. We tweaked a few lines here and there, but we're just, as John said, we're looking forward to getting back to normal. And we're there. We're open the same number of hours as we were now. We're getting all the rooms open up again, and we're just looking to getting back to normal.
So just in case I'm misinterpreting the question, I think what we're looking about from the operation standpoint is a 1.2% increase. Actually be slightly less than that is my recollection. And so if you're looking at what was appropriated versus what was spent, it's essentially that 1.2% change on the lump sum.
Okay. Thank you. Any Councilor Hamel?
Thank you. Have you started to increase your staff levels yet?
Yes, we have. In fact, I think it was just about two weeks ago that we reached what is full staffing level.
And my next question, I guess, would be for City Manager Myers. As far as like any of the COVID relief monies, would the library qualify for any of that as far as their extensive cleanings that they've had to do and the cost of doing that?
Yes, so all of that was compiled by Glenn Smith, our finance director, for all departments. So any submittals that came in, were filed under the appropriate programs that were in place. And you've heard me say several times there were numerous programs, so depending which one they qualified for. And reimbursements came in. I made a decision with Glenn that we were keeping track of everything, but we weren't necessarily going to take the time to go back and backfill reimbursements to every single department just as an exercise. I mean, it all comes out at the end in the wash in the general fund, and we've got good internal numbers to do that. But just to keep busy work with so much going on, we didn't do that. So one of the things that I think I mentioned last week during the administration budget presentation was that the library did overspend on some of their maintenance and smaller projects line items because of the extra cleanings. And at the same time, you've heard they underspent on salaries. So typically, we don't do a carry forward on salaries not spent, because generally speaking, those are out of your control. Either you had a vacancy or somebody retired or that type of stuff. In this particular case, where they did pull money out of their budget for those maintenance type of projects, I forget the dollar amount, Glenn, but we've got about 15,000 in carry forwards coming from a salary line item to allow them to do those maintenance projects post July 1. So that's a little bit of unusual situation, but they did present a good case. And again, some of their reimbursements we did receive and will flow through into the general fund balance.
Any other questions? Counselor Susie?
John, a question for you. Is there any carry forward coming through from the operational side? I understand the salary side.
Well, so for the specific projects that we want to carry forward, as everybody I think has probably experienced in one form or another, contractors are pretty busy right now. And we've got a couple of items. They're significant, but they need attention. Our front steps have a veneer. It's sort of like an epoxy, but it's not. That's preventing the capillary salt damage. So that's one of the items. We've discovered that our chimney on our main heating plant, the flue inside the chimney for our main heating plant is leaking condensate into the building. So that's a priority. We've been trying to get people here to look at that well before anyone was thinking frost was going to be melting anytime soon. That has yet to happen. What am I forgetting? There's a third project.
Those are the two, crack ceiling,
The related,
parking lot.
that's right. Oh, the parking lot ceiling, that's right. So those three things are the outstanding. We've been pushing that forward. We've been trying to get people here to get that sewn up before the end of this fiscal year. But it looks like it's going to be July or August before those are done, and that's the nature of those carry
So
forward.
those will be carried forward?
Yes.
Okay. And one last question for my interest from years ago. I was on the library board many years ago. And there was a top floor was all like a museum. Is that still in existence, or is that still there?
Back around 2004, 5, and 6, we created an arrangement with the Laconia Historical Museum Society. They have a building that they privately own on Water Street, which is where their headquarters and their archives are. And they have graciously allowed us to use that space free of charge to store our fairly extensive artifacts there. And one of the things that allows us to do is curate that collection. So rather than it being just stuffed into the reference room, which is where you were describing, we look for themes to sort of tell our local history. And we do contract with them to actually produce those exhibits. The number vary per year, but currently 2 per year that we curate, and we do that in I call it the rotunda room of the upper level around that wide opening, the circular opening.
Thank you.
And in fact, I think there are two exhibits that we're planning to do. The one that we've reactivated is the history of the public library in America. And the other one, let me rephrase that, it's never stale dated, but it's less ceremonial now, is the story of women's suffrage here in town. Pretty interesting to read back to the newspapers and see who was in favor of and who was opposed to that movement and what the consequences. That'll be the second exhibit that we will use some of those artifacts that you're talking about.
Thank you.
Counselor Hamel?
Did I hear you say that you're looking to crack seal your parking lot?
That is yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that funded differently from the cities doing the streets?
Well, I don't know if it has to be, but yes,
Well-
that comes directly from us, and Wes Anderson gives us a bill.
Okay, so that was what I was going to suggest, is doing it while the people are in town, doing the crack sealing, and whatever your portion would be, it'd be a lot less than going out on your own.
We've compiled things like that in the past. I know we did it with the school one year when we were looking at the parking lot at the middle school and that type of stuff. So
Great.
Wes supplied me with the estimate for the job. It's just that it's, again, they're behind.
Yeah.
Whoever the contractor is.
Okay, so you are teaming up with Public Works. Great.
Any other questions? Seeing none, just a final comment, and I did not know that we were one of only 2 libraries, public libraries, that remained open. That is certainly a remarkable feat. No, I'm not surprised. But the fact is, compared to all the other libraries, it's really extraordinary to think about. I mean, it took a bit of, you had to be nimble. You had to be thoughtful about what the mission of the library is, and you had to have people who were, it was a bit of courage, quite frankly, to come into work when so much was unknown, particularly in the early stages there. So I want to say congratulations and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. And, it's my staff and the trustees that made these decisions. So we all work together as a team, and I'm just glad it's just about over.
Right. So make sure to share with your staff and your team, Randy, how much we appreciate it. Okay.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
That's everything.
And up next, under item 6B, we have the Water Department, and I see Ben Crawford here. Welcome, Ben.
Evening.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Well, I'm doing better now that I took my bottled water off the table, because I think we had a conversation about that once in the Water Commission, that why are we having bottled water when the
Yep.
water in this city is so darn good?
Yep.
And yeah, anyway, so I had to just admit it now, so I didn't have to carry it with me. But
All right.
welcome. It's nice to have you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. So yeah, good evening. I think all of you, I think I've presented to you before. So I'm Ben Crawford, Superintendent at Laconia Water. Superintendent at Laconia Water. And just kind of as a preface to all this, just I think you all are aware, we are an enterprise fund. We kind of work with the city, but we work out of the revenues that we pull in from the sale of the water in the city as opposed to the tax base. So it's kind of always our little caveat at the beginning. And I'll just go right through on the pages, and I believe we're starting on page 148 in your budget books. So that first page is our operating budget, and that's our revenues. The first 2 items you'll see are the big ticket items for us. That's our water billing. It's our water for both residential and commercial. Those we factor off of kind of historically how we've been doing, how we've been trending, and we had a very minimal change this year. We had a little bit up, a little bit down as far as the units went up a little bit, and we're basing our consumption going down a little bit. So our total revenues based upon that are actually up 0.05% or $1,300, which at the 2.8 million, I mean, that's not really a change, but just of note there. Additional income are other things that we see as far as our interest on our savings. If we're pulling in any money from all the building permits, construction and maintenance assessment. So it's not directly on the building permits, but what we take in is kind of an impact fee as people sign on. So our total income was up 0.45% or just about $13,000. So again, a pretty minimal change on the revenue side. And we are not, because of that, we're not expecting any rate increases this year going forward, which we've talked about at the board level. And I know that's kind of always a question of concern here is, will we be increasing rates? But it doesn't look like we will at this point. So things are looking good as far as revenues. Any questions on those before we go into expenses? And I'll just kind of touch upon each section of the expenses rather than line by line. Okay. So expenses are salaries. We did have an increase there. We based that upon a 1.8 cost of living. And a big portion of that was, that was the main portion of that was just the cost of living. Everything else stayed fairly similar as far as the overtime and everything in there. Then we go to production expenses. Those are all the expenses incurred at the treatment plant. So the production of water, everything from power, chemicals, maintenance of the tanks. That actually went down slightly, $3,500 or just under 1%. So again, a fairly small change there. Any questions on any of those?
What would you, the reason your expenses went down, what was it? I mean, I know it's a small dollar amount, but it's still, the fact that it goes down is significant.
Yep, one down at the very bottom, so you see the Scada Maintenance, and I think that actually
Got it.
came up last year. We were looking to go into a global care program, it's kind of an insurance on the Scada program. We looked more into that and talked to our programmer who does all of our Scada programming, which is, sorry if I'm speaking out of the knowledge here. Scada is what we use to monitor everything from pumping out of the bay into the tanks and all the treatment at the plant. So that's basically our system for everything. Upon his investigation of it, we're working towards more of a proactive replacement on our own time rather than purchasing into this that we may not use. We evaluated and said, okay, what pieces can we start taking out that may be aging before they go? So we're doing a more proactive approach on our end, but we didn't buy into that global care
Gotcha.
program. So that brought the Scada Maintenance down 5,000. I believe it was 6,000 was the buy-in on that. So that's the majority of that change right there.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Right, on to the next page, the distribution expenses. This is most everything out in the street. You see hydrants, water valves, things like that just out there that need maintenance. And there was actually no change there. Some things were, we looked at going up and down, but actually came out to be no change right across the board on the distribution expenses. Our billing expenses went down 1% or $300, which again is a very minor change. And that was just due to some office supplies that we haven't been hitting that number. So we brought it down a little closer to where we've been. And then our other expenses, that covers a whole range of things, everything from, you'll see our medical insurance is in there. We've got retirement, all of our computer expenses, things like that. So that did, total other expenses went up almost 7% or just under $50,000. Items to note in there, I think you've probably seen in other departments, retirement has gone up the rates right across the board. So that brought up almost $30,000 of that change. And then also in here, you'll see another increase is the medical insurance, which that we do based on the increase. They had given us a 9% not to exceed. It came in at 6.2. So that this number is based on the 9% as we got at the beginning. So we actually came in a little under that. And then we also plan on anyone that's either on a buyout or has the potential to go to a couples plan or a family plan, we kind of give them that in here. So we plan for it if they do switch insurances. So that's where the increases come in there.
In looking at the retirement line,
Yes.
Do you anticipate, maybe Scott, you can weigh in this a little bit as well. Is that a number that we can anticipate going forward to continue to climb?
So full disclosure, I serve as the municipal employer representative to the New Hampshire Retirement System Board of Trustees. So my short answer is going to be no. What happened this past year that the board took action was they lowered the assumed rate of return of what the portfolio was going to earn over a long period of time. And that mainly was driven by interest rates practically being at zero. And you all know from your savings or investments on the fixed income, you're at zero. It's great for borrowing, not so great if you're trying to live off the income. So because of that change right now, which brought the assumed rate of return down from 7.25 to 6.75, I think the feeling from the board is they are very comfortable with that, and peers across the country of about 140 other public pension plans, we're still below the median with that drop rate now. So others are trending that way. We are there. So that's what really drove this rate increase. It wasn't dealing with performance. I think a year or two when we talked, the assets in the plan itself were over $9 billion. And at my last board meeting in, I guess it was earlier this month in June, the months are running together, assets not finalized for the month of June yet, but crossed over the $11 billion threshold. So performance is actually holding up very well, 3, 5, 10-year, 20-year against peer groups. This was really a change in assumptions, if you will, to be a little bit more conservative that drove the increase this year.
So would you run that number by me again? That 9 billion was what?
Probably about 18 months ago, and we're at a little over 11 billion.
So 11 billion assets.
And the rates are set every 2 years. So this rate goes into effect for this July 1, and that'll lock in for 2 years. So the retirement system rate is not something that changes every year.
Right. What's the unfunded liability? Do you know?
We're actually by dropping the assumption, it actually bumped up the unfunded liability. So it's a little over 5 billion right now. So we're about 60. I'm probably, don't hold me to the exact number, 63% funding level right now.
Benchmark for that is what? I'm completely off the rails here, but what's a
Benchmark for what you would try to be?
Yeah.
I mean, in a perfect world, 100%, no one ever gets there. We do have, what they did back in 2009 is they took the unfunded and they basically applied a 30-year payback schedule to that to try to bring it down over a reasonable period of time. So we're 10 years, more than 10 years, 12 years into that 30-year payback schedule. And if you look at the tapes from 2 years ago with the meeting, we actually had a slight decrease in retirement system rates for all the groups but teachers, and teachers rose because if fewer kids in the school system, fewer dollars going into payroll collectively across the state. So we changed the assumptions on the teachers. But for the first time in a number of years, there actually was a decrease 2 years ago. And that was kind of like, think about it, paying your mortgage. You finally get to the point where you start paying more principal than interest. And that's where we got after the 10 years of steady work, and all things being equal. And again, who knows what happens with investments, but over time, we should start to see right now a stabilization and then a decrease in those rates going forward. So this was a one-time blip for a good reason.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No,
Ben.
that's all right. You answered much better than I could have, so thank you.
Because the trustees said so.
And then going on to the next page, we have the other charges, which again is just kind of a little bit of a miscellaneous area, but it covers a lot of our vehicles. And also the big one in there is depreciation, which a lot of you may notice will actually drop almost $20,000 this year. And that's due to a change of how we scheduled everything. We kept most everything the same. Actually, the only thing we did change is the depreciation of our water pipes, which we'd held at 40 years for ever as far as we could look back. We went to 50 years on our water pipes, and we based that upon when we put them in, we expect 100-year life expectancy. That's what we put on a pipe when we put it in the ground. So we said half of that we could depreciate it over. We ran it by Lance and Heath. Pat came in and sat at a meeting with us. We went through all that, and everyone was in agreement to go to 50 years on the depreciation. So it did actually drop the number is in our budget because of the extension of that time period. So the total other charges did still go up 2% or $17,500. And that is, you'll see right in there, just under depreciation to the interest on bonds. That went up, which I think, again, most of you were here when I came in and we got a $1.8 million bond for the transmission main and the Lakeport water main project. So that's going to be the interest on that will start coming in, as well as we'll have our first principal payment coming up in the next fiscal year. And that's a separate item. So if you come down a little bit farther, so total expenses right in the middle there, actually we're just about 3%. It's 2.9% up, and that's $93,000. So we're looking at a very slight increase on income, and then a 3% increase on expenses. And then our net income and loss, you'll see there, we're actually showing a $214,000 net loss, which we've shown historically in the past. About 90% of the time, we do show a loss on our budget. I think only one time we've actually come out in the red. Most times it does come back around. It's because we budget conservatively on what we're gonna put out as far as our revenues. So we shoot low and hope that we pump more water than we do, and we can keep our expenses low and keep everything on the good side there. And actually this year right now we are doing very well as far as staying in the black, and we had a $135,000 loss in the budget, but we're around $300,000 to the plus side right now. So just kind of as a note there as we come forward this year, we did have a great year as far as pumping water. I know it was very up and down for everyone with COVID, but then with the drought as well, we have Lake Winnipesaukee as our water supply, so we didn't have any restrictions on irrigation or water use, so we were able to continue as normal. And it seemed like a lot of people did come to the area last year, and especially this spring as well. We're seeing it already with Bike Week, so we're going to hopefully continue to ride that wave and keep pumping water and not having to increase rates. And that is what I have for now. If anybody would like to go into the capital projects, I'd be more than happy to, or if we're all set with that, I can stop.
How about going down to the bottom line, your capital improvement fund? I mean, can you explain that a little bit?
Yep. So that $767 you see at the end there, that's basically taking what's our capital budget. We go ahead, we take all our projects and our purchases that we budget for in capital. That's what's left on the table more or less after everything's taken out. So we're saying we're $767 is not accounted for on the capital side. Short of moving one of the capital numbers up $767 to zero it out, we're just showing that that's still there.
And can you refresh my memory? I mean, the numbers in previous years, the actual numbers are pretty significant, particularly 1920, right, with 755,000.
Yes.
Why such a big swing on that?
Give me 1 second. I will
Yeah, take your time.
back here.
We're well ahead of schedule.
I believe that was due to, and I can get back to you with a more firm answer, but I believe it was when we have capital reserve projects, we pull money over. So when the Court Street project came up and I believe it was the 2 million gallon tank, we took money from our capital reserves, brought it into our funds for that. So that sways that number up and down because we're actually pulling it from another
Gotcha.
account in there. And I can get you a more
Okay.
concrete answer on that, but I believe that's why that
Okay.
that
Thank
number
you.
jumped around.
Thanks, Ben.
Yep.
Any questions? Seeing none?
Nope.
Go right ahead.
No questions, but a comment. I want to really thank your department and you doing a great job for the city of Laconia with the great quality water we have and keeping up with the projects to replace pipe and all that there. So thank you.
Good. Well, thank you. That means a lot.
I would always kid Ben when he would come into the office every, not too frequently during the COVID time, but how lucky we were to have surface water and not have those drought restrictions in place when probably 90% of the communities across the state. So between COVID and more people coming to the area and then no watering restrictions, he was smiling all the time when I saw him.
One of the few that, had a good experience during COVID. Yeah.
Thanks. I know, having been on the Water Commission, thanks for the work that you all do. I think it goes, it's not always obvious what's going on at the water department, but we're fortunate that when we turn it on, we have a darn good water in this city. And I think it's served very well, not only by you, but certainly by commissioners. I see Commissioner Driscoll out there. So thanks for your service. Thanks for the work that you and your team have done.
Thank you
Thank you, Ben.
very much.
Thanks, Ben. Well, brings us to 6:31 PM, and I don't think we have any other business before us for this portion of the meeting, so let's adjourn. We have 28 minutes until we kick off again.
So